Okay, so this would be what I guess I would call lesson 0 for Fusion 360. It's pretty standard, basic stuff. Um, when you first log into Fusion 360, it should probably come up something like this. It may ask you to log in. By the way, your identity is over here in the top right-hand corner. You can click on your profile, for instance, and it brings up your online profile. It takes a while for that to load. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but it has things like password, username, some communications, that kind of thing. There are other things online as well that you make use of with Fusion 360. But anyway, there's that. Also over here, they have help. So there's some help stuff here. I've never really used it. You do have notifications, and sometimes you need to check your notifications because occasionally you'll log in and you'll be offline and not realize it until you try to save or open something, and something won't be functioning, and that usually will be under your notifications. There'll be a button there you'll change. Job status, extensions, and don't worry about those things. Clearly over here we have the save button. Here's an important drop down. This is how you create new files, how you make drawings, which we probably won't do before the OS. Opening files can be done from here, but I'm going to show you that's not where we open them from. Of course, you can save here as well. To 3D print items, there's also something here you would do. So that is an important drop down, the file drop down. This is the big one, it's the data panel. So the data panel, if you see these 9 dots, when you click them, this thing pops up on the side. Notice there is a house, a little home. You go home in your data panel. That's where you guys will probably start in your data panel. You won't have all of these entries here. This is all work that I've done. You might have some of these down at the bottom, the samples, but you definitely won't have all of this. You should have my recent data. I think maybe your first time you start up there isn't even anything on recent data. And then all of these are folders that I have created within the design data panel they call it over here. So when you want to create one of these, you do that by clicking New Project, and we'll do that stuff later. But a lot of times, this will pop up, and I'll click it briefly to open something I've been working on, but I'll close it right away. And the reason I keep my data panel closed is it gives us plenty of room to work with in our workspace here. So this is the workspace. This is where your model will be developed. I am hopeful, though not certain, that this Loom recording video will capture pop-up windows that are created as we make these videos. If it doesn't, we might have to come up with a different way of recording the videos. Sometimes there has been some weirdness about that. But nonetheless, so let's go through a couple of things here. I've already been across the top on all of those guys. What I want to do next probably is go down here. Yeah, down here at the bottom. Down here at the bottom middle. We have, these are view tools. They change the way you view items that you're working on. There's the orbit, and if you click, there's a down arrow here. There's free orbit and constrained orbit. I don't typically use that. There's look at. I don't use that. Pan I will occasionally use. When you click that, and then you click and hold anywhere in your design space, it allows you to kind of slide it around, your view around. It toggles on and off, so you would want to... Oh, wait, maybe you have to hit escape. You have to hit escape. I'm sorry to get out of it. It does not toggle. This is useful. There's zoom, and you can use that. You do this by sliding 2 fingers up and down. All right, will it do 1 finger? No, it's a 2-finger zoom in and out. Again, I think if you hit escape, that turns off. This is very useful. So I don't remember if this is the default setting or not. When you click the down arrow here, there's zoom window and fit. Fit is what I prefer. So if you have it and it's set up and it looks like that, please switch it over to this for fit. Zoom fit is very, very useful. Again, I'll show you later when we're working on stuff, but I just want to explain this changes how you view stuff in your workspace here. Display settings here, visual style is one we'll go to several times. If you click that down arrow next to the display settings there, visual style is something we will play with some. So be aware that's down here under the view tools. These others I actually don't play with at all. So that would be that. Similarly, the grids and snaps. Oops, I don't know what I just did there, but notice that if I click fit, it should, it doesn't zoom me to, Usually it zooms you to with this in the center when you do that. So let me go to pan here, click this and bring that down to the center and hit escape. Um, Under grids and snaps, I do keep the layout grid and the layout grid lock in place. I do not have snap to grid. I find that's not useful. So you should probably just have the first two and then incremental move. I don't use that, but that is a thing you might be interested in playing. Basically what that is when you use the arrow keys on your keyboard, it causes things to move by set values, and you set those values here, but we're not going to use those. And then viewports, I never use these. So I would say do not choose the multiple views. Leave it like this. Some people do like working that. Traditionally, Autodesk had that as an option for your original AutoCAD. They used viewports instead of this. So that's one way of changing your view. The other way to change your view is up here. This is called the view cube. We use this a lot. The fundamental way that it works here is what we're looking at here is a plane. I believe this is XY. It might be XZ. I forget. These colors, green and red, mean something. And as we get in and start working with it, we'll explore those more and figure those out. There's also some default settings that determines which one you see here. Those are up here under your preferences. Again, we're going to wait until we need those to dig into them because they're the sort of thing you set once and you forget about. But yeah, here's your view cube. If you click top, what it does is it views you. I don't know if you know. You see here this blue line is Z and the red is X. Okay, so that tells me what I'm looking at right here. This red is the X axis and this green is the Y axis. And the blue axis is not pictured. It goes perpendicularly from these planes at this point right here in the middle, which is called the origin. The same thing is true here. This corner right here, this ZX corner, that is the corner of what we're viewing here. So top is from here. So if I click this, it'll actually change my view. So I'm looking straight down. These two arrows over here allow us to rotate around our vertical axis wherever we're looking like this. So this can allow us to rotate like that. Similarly, these arrows can rotate you 90 degrees. So now I'm looking at the back. I'm looking Z plane and X plane with up and Z actually being down here. As you can see, it's upside down looking. If I go this way, now we're looking at the front. This way, positive Z is that way and negative Z is down. And to my right and left are my X. The house here, if you click that, that takes us back to the home view, the view we have by default. There also is a drop down here that you can change some of these settings, but I don't typically do that. I will only use, now one last thing about this is you can click and drag. So if you click and hold down with one finger on your mouse pad, it allows you to drag around. So click and drag, click and hold, and you can drag like that. And click home and it takes you back to home. So that's useful when you want to look at a part from different views. That's very, very useful. So that's one way of viewing things, another way of changing your view. Next, I'll draw your attention over here to the left. To the left here is what I sometimes call the design tree because that's what they called it in SolidWorks. I do sometimes mess up and use SolidWorks terms when I'm talking about Fusion 360 because I originally learned on SolidWorks. But anyway, the browser here, you notice things can be compressed or expanded, standard stuff. You have a little arrow, you click and it takes it down or pops it back up like that. Okay. And notice it says unsaved and this says untitled up here at the top. That's because we haven't saved or titled anything because I haven't really made anything yet. I'm just kind of showing you around the workspace. So under document settings, it shows you what settings you have. If you click this right here, like you hover over it for a second, this shows up and you go to the right of that. You can change those units by clicking that and come over and alter these. I often work in inches, so I'm going to go ahead and make that. I'm even going to make that my default. And I recommend you do the same thing. We'll work in inches. The fact is, the fundamental unit used in Fusion is actually the centimeter. And it just converts everything live for you while you're working so that you can see them in whatever you asked for here under these document settings. But the fact is it's actually converting everything to centimeters with something like 10 decimal places accuracy or whatever. But nonetheless, that is one thing that sometimes will come up. You'll be working on something and it'll do something weird, and it's because it's actually the fundamental unit is centimeters. So that can be confused. Named views. If you click this down arrow, you see the top, front, right, and home, and these are basically the same if you click on them as clicking over here in the view cube. So when I click home here, it takes me to there. I hit click front there. It's the same as clicking front on the here and coming to this. If I click home here, it's the same as clicking the home button over here. So that's just a viewed thing. It's kind of nice to have. Then one more thing is this under Origin. This will be something we'll use quite a lot. The document settings will change that once. The views we hardly use. We usually use the view cube. But over here under the Origin, if you click the down arrow here, there's actually nothing changes in your view right now because these are all hidden. You see this thing looks like an eyeball with a slash through it? Yeah, when you click that, it toggles between showing and hiding the items on the Origin, I guess, menu of the browser. And you can turn these things on and off. There are times that it's distracting and unhelpful to have those things shown, and other times it's useful to see them. Sometimes you only need to see some of them. Like there might be a time that you don't need to see any of these planes, the XY, XZ, and YZ planes, but you want to see the axes, the Z-axis, the Y-axis, and the X-axis. Other times all you want to see is the origin, which is a little bit silly because the origin's kind of always there. It just actually makes it a point that when you do it like this that you see. It's that little circle there. So all of these are by default visible, but the whole menu itself, I guess you'd call it a menu, the whole drop down is actually made invisible. So sometimes when you want to see those things, you'll just toggle those on and off. The important part about the browser, and this down here that I'll talk about in a minute, is that items become added to the browser list as you create parts. Likewise, items get added down here as you create parts. As you're working on a design, these things will be populated with each new activity you do. In fact, they call this thing down here at the bottom the timeline, and I'll show you more about that later. I'm going to try to keep this video under 15 minutes, though, so got to wrap it. So you'll see more about the timeline later on. We use the timeline quite a lot to scroll forward and backward through a design to try to edit it and repair it and make changes to it and that sort of thing. So the timeline is very, very useful. And then under the browser, it will also populate with items that are similar to but not identical to your timeline. Your timeline is how you create things. The browser shows those items in here, and there's items called bodies, usually is what they call them, that will be put in here, or sometimes components. So components and bodies will be added to the browser, as well as other activities that you perform will be added to your timeline as you create a part. So all of that real basic again. So we've got some menu stuff up here, most importantly the data panel, which allows you to access your old work. Likewise, we have your view tools down at the bottom, which we'll use zoom to fit quite a lot, and we may play with the display settings. Over here we have our view cube. We use that a lot to move around, and then our browser here and our timeline down here. Now, for the really important stuff, the utility works in different modes. We will always be working in the design mode, or what's called workspace. If you click this down arrow, you see there's a generative design workspace, there's a render workspace, animation, simulation, manufacture, and drawing workspaces. If you ever see something that's unfamiliar up top, go back in here and make sure you're in the design workspace. So if you start to work and you're like, wait a minute, what is all this? I've never seen this before. Go over here and check that you're in the right workspace. Similarly, this menu up here is the default menu. It's the one we'll use the most. There are sub-menus or other alternative menus in the design workspace. There's the surface menu. We won't use that. There's the mask menu. We won't be getting to that. There's the sheet metal menu, which is really, really useful, but we probably won't use it. Plastic menu and other utilities here. All of these we will probably not touch on much at all, if at all, in this class. We're going to stick solely with the solid menu on the design workspace. And then we have our different tools here. Now these tools are all used for crafting your models. Okay, we're going to go those in more detail in the next video, but I can show you that we have these built-in activities, these icons, and then we have a drop down. And these items here actually are duplicated here, and you can actually remove them. And sometimes this happens by accident. You'll click and drag, and whoa, it went away. Well, it didn't really go away. It's still under the Create menu, and we can come down here. And if you click these three buttons, Pin to Toolbar is an option, and it adds it back up here. You can also rearrange these. You can move them over like that. And some of these, when you click them, they actually will, once you activate them, and don't worry about what I'm doing right now, it'll actually change the visible menu because you've gone into a different mode. And that's something we'll see happen as well. But nonetheless, that's a little bit. 15 minutes is kind of a long time just to show you real briefly. So you've got your menu of tools up here, and we're going to go into those deeper. Thanks for your time, and we'll see you next video.